On this kitchen table sits a dented, unlabeled tin. The label is long gone, but the history remains. The men who lived on this ration gave it two completely different verdicts. Warmed in the tin, they said it was edible. Cold, they swore it was a man-killer. On paper, the recipe is almost wholesome. Turnips, carrots, potato, onion, haricot beans, and beef. I have made worse stews on a cold night by choice. Yet this specific list of ingredients became the shorthand for the whole grim business of being fed in the trenches. Men spat the name Maconochie like an insult. The ingredients alone do not explain why thousands of soldiers described this meal as a punishment. There is a hidden variable in this story, one that begins well before the trenches, in a small fish shop. In 1870, James Maconochie began putting fish into tins. He and his brother Archibald moved to the Suffolk coast, taking catches that would rot in days and sealing them in metal to last for months. It was the ability to send a meal across an ocean and feed an army from a single factory. By the turn of the century, a single Maconochie factory could produce 100,000 cans in a day. They became the largest tinned food producers in the world, securing contracts to feed the British Army from South Africa to Flanders. Maconochie was part of a limited larder. There was bully beef, compressed salted beef set in its own fat. In a Flanders winter, the fat froze so hard that men had to chip at it with the points of their bayonets. Then there were the army biscuits, slabs of flour and water baked to the density of roof tiles. They were hard enough to crack a tooth if a soldier did not soak them in his tea first. Against bayonet-chipped beef and tooth-cracking biscuits, a soft vegetable stew should have been a prized comfort. On paper, it was the best engineered meal a soldier could hope for. The reality of the meat was often different from the recipe. Soldiers complained that the beef was rarely a quality cut. Instead, they received stringy, gray gristle that reheated into something resembling string in oil. The factory process involved no searing or browning to build flavor. The meat and vegetables were simply boiled soft and sealed in a tin. It was a pale, shapeless mass that relied entirely on the tin to keep it edible. But the ingredient list hides the real villain of the story. To mass-produce a stew that would stay shelf-stable and calorie-dense, the tins were packed with rendered animal fat. While the stew was tolerable when fresh and hot, its nature changed the moment it left the factory. The fat was a dormant trap, waiting for the physical conditions of the front line to turn it into something else. A soldier could not light a fire whenever he was hungry. Up on the front line, smoke threw immediate shell fire, and wood for fuel was scarce. Men relied on small Tommy cookers, fueled by solid alcohol, but during a bombardment or a heavy rain, those cookers were easily lost or drowned in the rising mud. On those days, you ate the ration exactly as you found it, cold. Here, the laws of physics turned a meal into a man-killer. When the tin goes cold, the fat rises to the top and sets. It congeals into a thick, white lid across the surface of the stew. Imagine you are exhausted and starving, and dinner is a cold disk of grease you must break through to reach the gray jelly beneath. One reporter who saw this described the result as an inferior grade of garbage. Warmed, it was edible. Cold, it was a man-killer. The trench environment triggered a physical change in the tin, transforming a defensible stew into an unrecognizable, gag-inducing mass. I warmed a portion of my own recreation through. The first spoonful is plain and undersalted, but genuinely edible. I can imagine being grateful for it on a cold night. But 20 minutes later, once the stew has gone stone cold and the white skin of fat has set, I cannot finish the mouthful. I instantly understand why the men described it that way. Historian Rachel Duffett found that the Army viewed food as a mathematical problem, 4,000 calories a day to keep a man digging and fighting. But the men did not experience food as numbers. They experienced it as comfort, or the absence of it. You cannot enjoy a meal, however many calories it contains, with the smell of death in the air. The diaries of the time swing between despair and joy, based almost entirely on food. One morning, a soldier might record flat sarcasm about his daily ration of beef. The next, he scribbles with childish delight because a tin of salmon arrived. When brown paper parcels arrived from England, stuffed with a mother's cake or a Christmas pudding, grown soldiers turned into joyful children. The mud and danger of the trench remained the same. What changed was the ability to taste a meal cooked with care, rather than mass-produced fuel. The disgust these men felt grew out of more than just the ingredients. It was the cold, the monotony, and the loneliness of opening the same tin for the 100th time, while memory provided the flavor of a roast dinner they could not have. A meal is defined by its temperature, the company, and the environment in which it is consumed. This dented tin remains on the table today as a physical link to the men who stood in the mud, raising a metal spoon in the dark.